Okay.
They believe these children have no right to be in mainstream schools. Don't assume you know what they want or how they're feeling. Using computers at a much earlier stage than other people in education.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm delighted to introduce Sue, a retired professional who spent many years working with special children in the UK. Her dedication to help these children through academically and emotionally has made a lasting impact. Can you share with us your journey working with the special children in the UK and what initially inspired you to get involved in this field?
So I started out training as a primary school teacher, and I spent a year working with 5 and 6 year olds. And then I decided I would be much happier working with children in a setting where I could concentrate or focus more clearly on individual children's learning difficulties. And it's hard to do that
Yeah.
when you've got 30 children or more that you're responsible for. So at the first opportunity, I took a job with a small group of children. Now, we call them children with special educational needs. It's a bit of a mouthful,
Yeah.
but that's the term we use. In those days, now we're going back a while, this is 50 years ago or so, these children were called educationally subnormal,
Okay.
which is a term that we feel today is absolutely appalling. I mean, some were educationally subnormal, the category. Some were severely subnormal. And this is a term that is totally taboo nowadays. We don't think of them like that at all. But my first job with children was in a classroom down the bottom end of a primary school playground, where I and another teacher took these children, and they were completely separated from the rest of the school. That's what happened a long time ago, 50 years ago. But I was able to have a small group of children, and I enjoyed being able to focus much more on their individual needs. So after that, I worked for a year in a special school.
Yeah.
And then I had my own children and stayed at home for a while. When I went back into work, I was able to work part-time to begin with, but supporting children in mainstream schools, primary schools mainly, and just concentrating on individual children or small groups of children.
Yeah.
I was peripatetic, and I absolutely loved this job. And I gradually did more and more of it, ended up working full-time with children with learning difficulties and medical needs and physical disabilities.
Throughout your career, what were some of the most significant challenge you faced when working with the special children? How did you overcome them?
Well, the main difficulties were, especially in the earlier days, working with teachers and schools who believed that the children shouldn't be there. They believed these children had no right to be in mainstream schools. They should be in a special school, and they didn't want to take any responsibility for the teaching of these children. So it was, the main problem was to try and help them develop an understanding of why it was their responsibility. And indeed, without them taking much more of a significant role in the education of these children, children wouldn't actually make the progress that they would otherwise make, because they would feel different. They would feel that they were just there, but not really welcome. So it's really important to get the teaching staff to feel that these children had every right to be in the school. That was a problem that carried on for a long time. I think now in most schools, I would say, children with special educational needs are accepted in mainstream to a large extent. Certainly, we've come a long way. And I think with the younger generation of teachers coming through, they have had experience of seeing and being taught with other children with these special needs. Whereas to begin with, when I was first working, children of that sort were simply not in mainstream school. They were hidden away. Those with physical disabilities, you never saw them.
Yeah,
You never saw children in wheelchairs. They just weren't there. They were at home. So there was no understanding of what they were like. They were seen as aliens because they just weren't there with the others. And gradually we have a situation where we expect to see children with special needs as part of everyday life.
True.
And that's made a huge difference to everyone, to everyone's benefit, I would say, not just the children with the special needs, but to everybody. Just being more understanding, more caring, having a greater understanding.
What specific technique or approach did you find most effective in helping special children through academic and emotional?
I think one of the main things is to make sure that you listen to what they're saying. Don't assume you know what they want or how they're feeling. Ask them, certainly as people get old, children get older, ask them, but ask them the whole way through, what is it? And just listen to what they want, well, what they're feeling. They don't always tell you things that are useful. They sometimes tell you things you don't want to know, or they, depending on their understanding and so on. But it's really important to listen, to help them feel included. I've touched on that already, but if they're told they can't go on a school outing because there will be steps and they can't be got into the building, then that child is being rejected. So to go, try as hard as you possibly can to make sure that you're doing things where everybody can join in. As for teaching techniques, one of the things that's happened during the course of my career was that we started using computers. Now, the people in special education, like myself, realized at a very early stage that computers have huge advantage for children with special needs. They don't criticize. If you don't do something right, it doesn't work. But there's no sense of rejection. You just keep going until you get it right. Using computers at a much earlier stage than other people in education. So, for example, I and my colleague were the first people to introduce iPads into schools in York. Well, in our teaching is for special needs. I remember the occasion when the iPads were delivered to the IT department, and they wouldn't let us have them until they'd played with them because they'd never had the chance. These were the technicians, the adults. And eventually they passed them on and said we could take them into school now. But also, we were the first, for special needs education, were the first to use touch screens. They simply didn't exist to begin with. And we realized that touch screens, they were used for children with significant learning disabilities only. And gradually, of course, we expect to use touch screens nowadays. But so actually, computing has had an enormous effect on teaching children, helping children. Very, very beneficial.
So how did you collaborate with parents, caregiver, and the other professionals to create a supportive environment for the children?
I think the main thing is to make sure you're communicating with everybody, so everybody knows what you're doing. In those days, it meant a lot of report writing, a lot of telephoning, making sure when I went into a school that I would talk with the teacher as well as the child, and then I would talk with the parents, and I would talk with the other professionals involved, if there were physiotherapists or occupational therapists involved. A great deal of basically, networking, just making sure that we were all working together to help the child. So that it was a joint effort, a joint support group. That was really important, just so that everybody felt part of this child's education and working towards the same goals.
So, Sue, looking back, what advice would you give to educators or caregiver in a region where there is still a lack of understanding or support for special children?
We've reached the point in this country where we feel that if you get education right for children with special needs, you get it right for everybody.
True.
That is now mainstream thinking in education. If your teaching works for children who have more challenges,
Yeah.
it will also be the right approach for all children. And I think that is a huge step forward. It's a mindset. They're not different in what we're trying to achieve for them. Just see them as part of the whole picture. Take the opportunity to give and feel that they're part of the whole picture. It's a mindset. What's right for special children with special needs is right for everybody.
Thank you, Sue, for sharing your valuable experience with us, and your insights are truly inspiring. And we wish you all the best in your retirement, and we are grateful for the work you have done to support special children.
Thank you.